Hello there and welcome. So today I thought I'd talk about negotiating hazards and also how a lot of drivers these days don't seem to react to hazards correctly, and I think this is probably why we have quite a few incidents on the road. I'm also going to explain why I don't believe that constantly reducing speed limits as part of the road safety campaigns is making much of an impact on our collision statistics and actual road safety. So when initially you're taught to drive, if it's in a car, you'll probably be taught mirror, signal manoeuvre, position, speed, look. And if you're on a motorcycle, it's observations, signal manoeuvre, position, speed, look. A bit close to the old white line there on a right-hander, wasn't he? And when you go to advanced level, or maybe some test standard training will also teach you the IPSCA, information, position, speed, gear, acceleration system. So these systems are all used to try and give people a routine or a system to deal with hazards. That's the whole point of driving or riding safely. The job you have is to identify hazards and then react to them. And we give you these systems so you can consider, once you identify the hazard, you can consider your position in relation to that hazard, your speed in relation to the hazard, and then maybe your gear and the amount of acceleration you're going to use to deal and negotiate the hazard. So all of the systems are set up so that you approach a hazard in the correct place at the correct speed. And that's quite a skill to learn, but it's something that's essential. So when we look at the system, our road position is the first part of the process that we're looking to use and decide upon, because road positioning is critical, and that also reflects on what your speed will be. So when we talk about the various systems, parts we're really focusing on today are the first parts, the position and the speed. We can always talk about systems in more detail another time. So I know there's some people out there who, especially when they've got full licenses, tend to look at advanced training, roadcraft, the system, and they will not be very promoting of it, shall we say. And I think it very much depends on the way it's explained and taught, but if you still don't believe in it, then okay, that is a matter for you. But it is there for a reason, and used intelligently, it can be very, very helpful. He's got his brake lights on, he's a potential hazard. Oncoming vehicle, potential hazard. Yeah, he is going to come through, so yeah, again, I've got to keep myself out of the way, keep my speed low. The bend is a hazard, so where do I need to put myself? Not in a place that I can get hit by an oncoming vehicle, but in a place that I've got maximum view. We've got a series of bends here, so it's all about constantly assessing where you position and the speed that you then use for that position. It's like they're, you know, equidistant from the hazards, keeping away from oncoming vehicles, keeping away from blind junctions, road surface dodgy there. So you're constantly placing your machine in a place that gives you maximum safety initially, and then you're looking for the advantage of the view ahead and the possibility of being seen. See, slow farm entrance, so look, I need to come out away from what is potentially a hazard, that farm entrance, and my speed doesn't want to be excessive, because if someone does stick their nose out or pull out blindly, I need to be able to deal with the problem. So here we have a series of bends. They are hazards. That driveway is a hazard. That driveway there is a hazard on the bend. The road narrows on both sides. That's a hazard. Hazard there, junction, driveway. Drain cover, that's not a problem. Could be a hazard in the wet though, couldn't it? Could reduce our traction. Van there, slightly over the white line, encroaching on our side of the road. He's a hazard. If you lose concentration and if you don't take notice of what's going on around you, you're very much relying on luck or other road users to take care of you. But of course the road itself will not take care of you. That's why we have collisions on bends. The road itself is not going to adapt to allow for you getting it wrong. Other road users might, but the road itself won't. So when we're driving along with short vision, listening to the radio, chatting to our friends, having a laugh, thinking about what we're having for tea tonight, we're not generally concentrating enough on the road. That's why I go quiet very often when I'm doing a commentary here, because I just want that little bit of extra time and space to think. It's like here, hazard, lorry, oncoming traffic, can't see round the bend, junction blind. So I've got to come into this slow with a safety position. Once the view's open, then I can bring the gas back on. I can't just go tearing through the gap, because then what I'm doing is I'm leaving my safety to everybody else, and that's just not sensible. Now we're just seeing the national speed limit signs. Left-hander, restricted view, so I can't put myself too far on the offside because of oncoming unseen vehicles. Got to watch these potholes. And then the view breaks. We can now see a warning of a very sharp bend. We can't see anything through that bend at all, so I have to position extreme to the left just in case something big or fast comes around that bend. Once I get the view, I can then bring the speed on. So you can see there my speed was very, very low because I was anticipating a problem. So let's look at this bend now from the driver's perspective. So basically there's so much foliage around here, so much greenery, you don't get cross views, therefore you have no clue what is on the road coming towards you, and therefore you must travel at a speed so you can stop in the distance you can see to be clear. So if we look at this bend, there's no one behind me, so I'm just going to slow it right down a little bit. What clue have you got as what is around there? Zero. So you look at the distance, and what if someone's coming fast? So what that car did, and I'm going to stay tight left because in case someone comes round, that car was over towards the right and came round here fast and wide, and it was probably wide because it was too fast for the bend. If there'd been someone coming the other way a little bit closer to the bend, fast, misplaced, or just there minding their own business, that could have so easily been a head-on collision. Just because you can physically get a vehicle through a hazard or a bend at a certain speed does not mean that it is a safe speed for that hazard. The two are poles apart, and this is why I don't believe speed limits or reducing speed limits are having any benefit on road safety, because a lot of people aren't worried about what the speed limit says, and they actually don't know the correct speed to drive through a hazard. And that's the fundamental problem, in my opinion, of so many collisions. You're only going to get that knowledge and experience by having training that absolutely points that out to you and gives you that benchmark. So let's have a look at the perspective of the motorcyclists now and see what sort of view they would have had on the approach to the bend. So we get quite a good view from here across. We can just see that white van going away in the distance at this point. And I've just seen a car coming towards us, but I didn't see that car earlier, so that suggests that there is very much dead ground. So to be misplaced at this point, yeah, it's a bit questionable. I was roughly where the motorcyclist was. I was very slow though, so a more leftward position would have been probably helpful. However, we did have the junction to consider to the left. The other factor to consider though was speed. Was that motorcyclist travelling at a speed where he could have easily reacted and adjusted to any hazards? So we can see as we come along here, the speed limit has dropped from 30. They've extended that 30 limit, and now we're dropping down to 20, which used to be the 30. So I don't believe at the moment that me having to do 20 along this stretch of the road here improves anybody's road safety at all. In fact, I feel quite vulnerable because it's a reasonably free-flowing road, and I'm always aware that the vehicle behind might not be very happy with me sticking to that speed limit. I can understand it being 20 when you get into a very dense residential area, and I think in that respect I've got not a problem with it, because as a experienced road user, my speed will often be 20 or maybe even below sometimes. All road users really should have the ability to place their vehicle in the correct place at the correct speed at the correct time for the hazard. This is why the speed limits aren't working, because we've not got that knowledge, or we've not got that ability for many road users, and we can witness it on a number of occasions. So it's like here, I've identified the hazard of the large vehicle. It's a 20 limit. I've got to position myself for safety and for view and adjust my speed accordingly, and I've got to anticipate the problems that may arise. So the definition of a hazard can be looked at in two ways. It can be looked at as anything that is or is potentially dangerous, or it can be looked at in the way that it is something that requires you to change speed or direction. So like here, the hazard is I can't see around the bend and I've got parked cars, therefore my position has to be to maximise view and safety first, and my speed has to be low enough that I can react if someone comes around that corner. I can only accelerate away once I've got a view, once I've got somewhere to go into. I'm doing 25. The speed sign there flashing at me. I'm doing 25 and a 30, and that's another thing, you see. I'm quite happy with 25 through here. It seems quite reasonable. If you react to the hazards correctly, see, in a way the 30 limit's irrelevant, isn't it? Because the safe speed isn't 30 in places. It certainly wouldn't be 40, but then 20, yeah, not probably high enough. But I think this is why a lot of drivers will and do get the view before I go around. Little reduction in speed there. Can't just go blindly around a part of the vehicle if you can't see the road ahead, of course. Yeah, again, position, speed. Yes, as I was saying, I think this is why a lot of drivers don't respect 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, because local authorities now are using them in a way that is just far too wide-reaching and is felt to be, even by experienced and sensible drivers, it's too slow. It's too slow in too many places, and it creates problems. It's like here, let's get that speed right down. Not a good place to stop a van. Perhaps he hasn't got much choice. Yeah, and look at the car taking a lot of care there. That's nice to see. Getting that view, coming around carefully. Is his wheels moving? Yeah, he's on the... yeah, okay. Good. Happy days. And you look at that and you think, well, look, what else would you do? It's obvious, isn't it? But you know, there's some people that have just gone straight around that. I remember years ago, I was further up country. It's this very long straight road with a very, very long hill. There was no visibility whatsoever. There was a tractor and trailer on it, and of course there was a massive queue of traffic. And as we approached the blind hill, the vehicle in front decided to pull an overtake, completely and utterly blind and across a solid white line. You can only wonder what goes through someone's mind when they intend to do something like that. You know, you're potentially seconds away from serious injury or death, and inflicting that on someone else by making a decision like that. Can't put it any blunter. It's Russian roulette, isn't it? I mean, the psychology of driving is so fascinating. What makes somebody make a decision that could potentially kill them and someone else? For nothing, really, apart from a bit of impatience. So we've just entered a 30 limit, and my choice of speed is 25 miles an hour. and now it's going down to even less. And okay, I've got vehicles in front that are dictating it to a degree, but even if they weren't there, wouldn't be a lot quicker. 22 miles an hour, and I'm quite happy with that. 19, there we go. So we're just in the 20 mile an hour zone now at the moment, and we'll just have a little look and see how we feel our speed should be. And obviously I can't exceed the speed limit because I'll be breaking the law. You see, at the moment I'm quite happy because of what's going on, being under the 20 limit, creating a little bit of space. He's turning off, 18 mile an hour. So at the moment, even if this was a 30 limit, my speed wouldn't be any different. Because we just have to constantly adapt to the hazards. That's the job. And of course you can see they're many and varied at the moment, so we've just got to weave our way gently through the hazards. Right, now I can accelerate a little bit, so I'm aware of what's going on, see the road narrowing. So I've already just touched 21 because it feels natural to have that speed, and I could have gone a little bit more but still been safe and aware. Instead I have to hold it dead on underneath 20 or on 20. Just like now, I could easily accelerate a little bit here and be absolutely safe. But legally I'm not allowed to. I still have to maintain this very slow speed, and this is where it feels completely and utterly wrong. And you could say we've got pedestrian crossing here, 30 is far too fast, pedestrian crossing, but I'm aware of that, and I'd have probably reduced my speed a little bit anyway for the crossing, made sure it was clear. It's like now, we've got a junction, why shouldn't you do 20? But there's lots of junctions, and there's junctions on roads of all speed limits, so what are we saying? We've got to go across every junction at 20 mile an hour to justify that? It just doesn't feel right in certain places. What a nice person. So now we're back into the 30 briefly, and then we're going into national, but of course we've got a lot more hazards here. Oh, he's giving me a little wave, must be the driver. Come through under caution. And away we go, national speed limit applies. So the question is, look, you've got all these industrial units here, how come that's national? Why shouldn't that be 30 or even 20 under the modern thinking? It just doesn't really hold water. So this road here is national speed limit, which means technically we can drive at 60 miles an hour. But would you want to? See, when I'm on roads like this, I'm not constantly checking my speedo. I'm just thinking about the hazards, and I'm thinking about the system, and I'm trying to put myself in the correct place, and I get a feel for the speed. Now I know you're not going to get a feel for the speed as a new or inexperienced driver or rider necessarily, so your speedo does give you clues. But this is again my argument why we should have some extra training. Because at the end of the day you're just abandoned, aren't you? Once you've passed that test, which is relatively basic, I know a lot of people don't pass it, but that tells you something about experience and ability. Once you've passed that test, you're left on your own. Where do you get that extra knowledge and experience from? And it's alright saying when you pass your test you really start to learn and you get experience. Yeah, of course you do. But are you getting the experience accompanied by the right information about that experience? So a lot of what you are now learning on your own to believe to be true and right is not necessarily so. I was going to say then, it feels difficult to keep this bike at 20. I think that's probably stretching it, that it's difficult. But it's a little bit uncomfortable, to be honest. It's not the nicest of rides. And I find myself glancing at the speedo quite frequently. Rather than paying quite as much attention maybe as I should to what's going on around me. So if you're a really new driver or rider, what are you going to spend more time looking at? The road or your speedo? See, I've got a car coming up behind me. He's had to brake because I'm at the speed limit. Okay, you say, well, he's speeding, he should have done. But that's because the speed limit's not really appropriate. In all fairness, at least he's not tailgating me. So now we're back into a 30. And I was talking about this the other day, and I said, well, you know, it used to be national, but then a lot of cars did used to end up in the ditch off of the right-hand bend there. Another case for poor training, probably, poor ability. So interestingly, I'm just coming in now to another village on the same piece of road, and they've still got the 30 limit and no 20 limit, although local councillors are talking about it because they love 20 limits because that solves all the road safety problems apparently. Now I'm doing, as you can see, low 20s. That's my natural speed through here. That's what I choose based on the road conditions. You know, for older people amongst us, a lot of us will go, yeah, of course you drive to the conditions. What are you on about? But evidence suggests, doesn't it, as you drive around, that people don't drive to the conditions, or they have a very different perspective of what is appropriate speed. So I'm quite happy to come through here at 22 miles an hour, but I'd be breaking the law if they put a 20 limit in. So now I can see that car waiting, so I don't want him to wait for too much longer, so I'm going to bring my speed up a little bit, because otherwise we'll be waiting for ages. Can't go above 30, thank you. So, you know, 28 up here, there's a little bit of 30. Yeah, that door's open, someone could step out. Well, I'll create a bit more space then, I'll have a view of the junction early. You know, I'm ready. That car's just put his indicator on ahead. What if I come around the corner and find him stuck in the middle of the road? Do I go in the back of him? There you go, he's completed his turn, happy days. So you can see really that a 20 limit is quite unhelpful in places. 30 through there is far more sensible, provided drivers have the correct interpretation of hazards and choose speed wisely in accordance with the conditions. It makes everyone's life easier to play it that way than having these blanket speed limits. So it's like here, we're in a 50 zone, this vehicle in front chooses to do 30. We're often talking a lot about too much speed for the conditions. You create hazards by being very slow yourself. So I'm very curious as to why he's so slow. He's turning off, he's probably lost. Alright, fair enough. At least he's done the good, decent thing to move out the way and sort himself out, which is excellent. But you know, you've got to be very mindful that if you do use very low speeds on higher speeds roads, you can cause problems. And one of my sort of pet hates, if you like, I saw the other day, I was coming along this road in the 50 limit going the opposite direction, and we were following a car doing 40 all the way. When it reached the 30 limit, guess what? Yeah, you know, it did 40. I just don't understand that. You hold the traffic up for ages and then break the law. Speed limits are never going to fix that problem, are they? It's like here, isn't it? A very narrow road, bit of a brow of a hill, bad road surface, lorries turning, look at that, no view. You've got to be at crawling pace coming through here, just in case. Choice of speed is a very personal one, but I know we all have different perspective on things, and we also maybe consider that our abilities are maybe better than others, and therefore we can ride faster than others. Maybe there's some truth in that, maybe there's not. That's right, I've got to watch pheasants, they're a bit daft and they like to run out in front of you. I just think it's better to err on the side of caution. I know that as I've got older I certainly tend to do that, generally speaking. Although every now and then something will happen and I'll reflect on it, especially if it's been a little bit touchy, you know. I'll reflect on that and I'll go, what could I have done differently? What would have made the difference there? What have I got to learn from this experience? Thank you. You know, there's always something you can learn from it. But if you constantly think you're completely in the right... See, this is a nasty little one, isn't it? We've got a turn here going up onto quite a narrow road. That's why I slowed down very early, because I want to get an early view, get my revs up. Just makes the whole thing a lot easier rather than rushing in and doing a horrible hill start. Well, I hope you found this video useful. The main thing that I'm saying here is that it's all about the hazard. So identifying the hazard is the most important part of the job. It's your starting point. Once you've identified that hazard and any others that might be present at the time, so don't just focus blindly on one, you know, let's look at everything that's going on. It's your correct response to the hazard that is going to keep you safe. So positioning safely and correctly, promptly followed by the correct amount of speed that you're going to use on the approach to that hazard and through the hazard. They're the big bits. Identify and respond with position and speed. If you get those bits right, that's the safety of you on the road. If you're not getting those bits right, I'm afraid it's all left to chance, and that's not what we want. So until next time, ride safe and take care.